Hey there, welcome back to the channel. This will be a part 3 of the BMW S62 swap into my BMW E46. Within this video, we will be reassembling the engine, starting with the timing covers and such. Let's do it. I'm going to put some RTV gasket maker at the seams where the head gasket meets the block and the timing cover. I also put a layer on the gasket itself where this water jacket is on both sides. These gaskets have little pieces protruding from the surface which will insert into the block. I'm going to also put a thin bead on the timing cover surface that meets the head gasket, since they're being reused. I'm now going to apply some fresh oil to the snout of the crankshaft so the front main seal glides smoothly onto it. I am now going to install the lower timing cover. The front main seal, you want to guide over the crankshaft so it doesn't damage the inner lip. Just like that. We are now going to install the upper timing covers. Also, same thing for the upper timing covers. I'm going to put a thin bead of RTV on the mating surface for the head gasket. When it comes to the holes for the alignment dowels, you can see they're ovaled on these upper timing covers. That is to help you install them. You can put them on and somewhat you have some movement up and down to assist you with getting them off. Pretty cool. I personally really enjoy this split timing cover design, as if you have to service the cylinder head for anything, you don't have to disassemble the entire front end of the engine to remove the heads. You just unbolt it here. It's pretty cool. I like that. I'm now going to install this brand new main timing chain tensioner. This is imperative if you want your brand new timing chain guides to last. As these get worn out and weak, that can prematurely kill the timing chain guides. So we're going to install this, have the crush washer in place to seal it against this timing cover, and then we'll torque it to 37 foot-pounds, which is equivalent to roughly 50 newton meters. This will be a 19 millimeter. I'm going to momentarily reinstall this crankshaft pulley so we can lock the crankshaft in place so we get proper timing for the Vanos. We can now reinstall these little guys. These are little oil valves here for the Vanos, I do believe. I put some fresh oil on the O-rings to aid in installation. So here we have the back of a Vanos unit. We're going to make one revision before installing it to the engine. This was made apparent to me by Peter Partee, the owner of Partee Racing. He specializes in these engines and has been doing so for, I believe, 9 years. BMW changed, there's a snap ring in here, if you can see it. BMW changed the design, so I'm going to pull this one out and show you the difference between the old and the new one here. Okay, so here is the old version of snap ring. Let me just move this aside. If you look at it, you can see there are these rough edges on the exterior of the snap ring. See that? You have two nubs back here, and you have these up front. So over time, these ledges here actually will cut into the Vanos unit and into the washer, which will scatter fine particles of metal throughout the engine. It can destroy. This is actually an oil pump for the Vanos. It can get in there and destroy it and damage other components. As the ring is under its spring tension, it can dig into the housing and such. So BMW made the change to these style snap rings. Okay, let's get this new snap ring installed. Or try to. I hate these freaking things half the time. Oh, there we go. Okay, so here we have the Vanos units with the new snap rings installed. We can now install these gears. They are non-size specific. They're all the exact same. To install these, we're going to need a 7mm wrench and a 10mm wrench. They are reverse thread, so they'll be getting spun to the left to get tightened. Okay, so now we need to pull up on these to expose that, which is the 10mm surface we need to grab with the wrench. And then on the gear side, they are the 7mm. We need to make sure we get all the oil out of these cylinders in here, okay? Because it's very imperative that we get these to be the whole way down into the housing as we install them into the engine. This is not going to work. I can literally feel the oil pressure building up, so we need to drain this unit some more. As you can see, I popped these covers off right here, and here are the pistons in the Vanos moving. See that? So oil runs through this entire unit, and it operates off of oil pressure, obviously. So we need to bleed it all off so these can bottom out into the housing. You can also pop off this cover right here. This is the solenoid pack. I'm sure the oil pressure would bleed off pretty quickly. However, I did not buy new gaskets or anything for these Vanos systems, so the less tampering I do, the better. Okay, we now have these Vanos units all bled down. The pistons are the whole way down and bottomed out. The gears are tightened to the pistons. We have our updated snap rings installed. It is time to place these into the engine. Now, you want to make sure your Vanos hubs are the whole way clockwise, both the intake and exhaust. Just like so. They freely spin if they're loose enough. Now, you'll want to grab the appropriate side Vanos unit. Okay, so real quick, these gears here. This section here will grab the camshafts themselves, while this section here will bite into those hubs, okay? So we're going to take this unit. We're going to just stick it in here. Once again, we have these pistons the whole way bottomed out. We have our hubs rotated clockwise until they bottomed out. We're going to take this unit, and we're also going to make sure another important step is on the intake side, these two prongs right here, you want to make sure they grab the oil pump. They will go into these holes right here. I apologize for this interruption. I, however, want to be very clear that during this Vanos installation, that I have the camshafts and crankshaft. They are all locked at top dead center with the appropriate timing tools. Okay, so we're just going to rotate that a little bit. We'll now take our unit. We're trying to get a hold of the camshafts first with the longer end of the gear. So we'll stick it in. And if we have to, we'll rotate the gears clockwise until they index into the cams. These next steps are very important. I'm going to make sure the oil pump lines up with the prongs. Okay, that's lined up now. Also, key note, whenever you're lining up the oil pump sprocket, you're not trying to move the Vanos hub, only move the oil pump itself, because you will lose your alignment. You know, you want to keep these fully clockwise. You don't want to mess with them once they're there. All right, so oil pump's lined up. The front of the gears are indeed seated into the cam. We're going to take a pick tool, put pressure on the Vanos housing, go into the hole of the intake side hub and move it counterclockwise very slowly until it seats into the hub. Just like that. Exhaust side, counterclockwise, slowly. Just like that. Bam. You see that? That was beautiful. Now at this point, we'll take the mounting bolts and we'll put a couple in. We are not going to seat the Vanos flush yet though. There's still some more important steps. We're going to install these bolts for nothing more than to hold the Vanos into place. Once again, we're not trying to suck it to the timing cover, okay? We're trying to keep a gap here. Okay, so we're now going to tighten up 2 of these Vanos hub bolts per side. We're going to tighten them the whole way down and then back them off 45 degrees. This is going to pre-tension the spring washer within the Vanos hubs. You should see this gap here begin to close. Just like that. And then we're going to crack them loose 45 degrees. Now we're going to evenly seat the Vanos housing to the timing cover to close up this gap. Okay, so if done properly, you should see a little bit of the teeth exposed from the hubs. As you can see right here on the exhaust side, there are some teeth exposed. And up here on the intake side, there are some teeth exposed. So now we can fully tighten these exposed Vanos hub bolts. The torque specification for the stock 8.8 grade bolts is 10 newton meters. You may have to rotate them with your finger. Clockwise, there we go. Make sure the oil pump is going to line up, spinning only the oil pump side. Okay. Go to the intake side, into the hole of the hub. Apply pressure and counterclockwise slowly until the very first tooth engages. There's that side. Exhaust side, once again, this hole right here, counterclockwise until the very first tooth grabs. Just like that. We are now going to remove all the locking pins, the crankshaft lock pins, and all 4 of the camshaft lock pins. Now, we're going to rotate the crankshaft 1 complete revolution away from true top dead center. Doing that will gain us access to the remaining hub bolts up here to tighten. I'm going to reinstall the crankshaft lock pin, and there they are, the last 3 bolts per hub. We're now going to rotate the engine and make sure it feels okay. That feels pretty smooth. With the crankshaft locked again, we can now check the timing marks to see if they all line up properly. There's going to be little square slots, you see that? And if they all line up within their windows, we should be good to go. You can see that side looks pretty good. Okay, looks pretty nice. Oh yeah, I think I did it. I think I have successfully timed this engine. Okay, so after multiple timing attempts, I finally got to where I was happy. These engines are pretty finicky with their timing, so I wanted to make sure that I was absolutely spot on with this. The biggest thing is whenever you're rotating these hubs counterclockwise, you want to grab the very first tooth that engages. So instead of this dot, for instance, moving this much, you want to move like this much. Very short and abrupt before the Vanos gears goes the whole way in, okay? I want as far as taking a caliper and measuring the millimeters from this dot to the first bolt to the right on both sides. Since we rotated those hubs the whole way clockwise, I used the bolt to the right as the measurements on each side. So yeah, for me, I have this dot to this bolt corner here, about 24 millimeters on both. And then in here, the hole for the intake, as you can see it now, it's down in there. From that hole to this bolt, it's like 25 millimeters on both banks. I have this thing dead nuts. Top dead center timing is now spot on. You look at the windows and the camshafts there. Those measurements, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying in my particular scenario, that's how I knew my timing was spot on both sides, was with that matching. It is now time to install the valve covers. Before those can go on, we must reinstall these oiling rails. Now, in the last video, I said that they were side specific. That is true, and that you needed to mark them. Well, not necessarily, as the difference you can physically see, the length is what is different compared to the bank 1 and bank 2 heads. They physically cannot be mixed up. And also, you're free to flip-flop them like this. You can swap exhaust and intakes. You just physically cannot swap the different lengths out. So, really don't need to mark them, honestly. And as far as dictating or figuring out which is the rear, which is the front, that is made prevalent by the dimple right here, this little mark. That tells you that this is the front of the rail. So they will face this way, dimple up front of the engine, just like that. And then, as far as these nuts go, they will get torqued to 8 Newton meters, which is equivalent to roughly 71 inch-pounds. It is now time to install the valve covers. We're going to firstly apply some RTV to these half moon cutouts in the head here and to the cracks in between the timing cover and the cylinder head. We're going to put a little bit in the crack where they meet together. So these will eventually bottom out on the studs down below. Once you get to that point, a simple quarter turn just to cinch them up is all you need. The final torque value for these is also 8 Newton meters, same as those oiling rails. Also, I am not going to be installing spark plugs nor ignition coils into this engine right now, because I'm going to compression test it before it goes into the car. But in the meantime, I'm still going to put this seal on up here and put on the vanity covers to keep possible debris from falling down in, even though I have it covered. You never know. A little piece of information for you. You notice this white powdery stuff on this gasket? That is nothing more than a powder to help release it from the mold whenever they're being made at the factory. That's all that white stuff is. As you can see, I have the crankshaft pulley removed once more to install the water pump and thermostat assembly. Now, as you can take note, we have this oil return pipe here, which goes to the very bottoms of the oil separators. A simple gasket, which can be applied to the timing cover. The alignment dowels will hold it on as you install the water pump. Now, in the previous video, I actually removed these parts separately, but I do believe, after lubricating the O-rings and such, that I can install the thermostat and water pump together now. Just like that. Now in the future, I probably will not do it like this again, as that was kind of difficult. I'm probably just going to separate them like I did in the previous video. And here we are. I did not record the rest of the assembly, I apologize, as I was charging my phone, and it is what I use to make these videos. I went ahead and installed the Vanos feed system here with the accumulator pump. I believe that's what that's called. The alternator, this engine lift point here, pulleys, just the basic, simple, boring stuff, you know. I really enjoy looking at this feed system. I don't know, something about these braided hoses and whatnot. It's just neat. I also love the appearance of those Vanos units. They just look, I don't know, they're just very cool. A lot of thought and design went into this engine, and it's just really something you must appreciate from an engineering standpoint. Back in the 90s, a team of engineers spent countless hours designing, planning, and bringing this thing to life. And that, in my opinion, is pretty freaking cool, because just look at this engine. It is just marvelous. We have ITBs, the Vanos, which is derived from the BMW S50 engine, which is the E46 M3, aluminum water pump and thermostat housings, 7,000 RPM rev limit, oil scavenging pumps, split timing cover design. It's just, this thing is so cool, man. I really appreciate this engine. It's just a work of art, in my opinion. I also went ahead and got my transmission cleaned up. This is the 420 gauge reg used in the E46 M3 and obviously the M5 E39. Now I know at the end of part 2 I said I was going to discuss what parts I'll be using to fit in the E46. However, I'm going to save that for part 4 as I misjudged the duration of this part 3 video. If you found today's video to be useful, knowledgeable, or entertaining, please consider subscribing to my channel, as I highly appreciate it. Part number 4, I will see you there. Catch you later.